the day you buy a house, you start getting benefits. You have ownership. You have, you can write off your interest. You can write off your taxes. You're paying down principal. You're building equity. Theoretically, that property is increasing in value, so you're building net worth. There are so many benefits that come along with buying a house that regardless of the interest rates, obviously buying at a 5 interest rate is better than a 7. I get that. But not buying at all gets you nothing.
Right.
Welcome back to the Modern Agent Podcast. My name is Logan Ricchetti with Modern Realty. This podcast is a combination of thoughts and opinions on the real estate market in Midland, Michigan with our local real estate agents from Modern Realty. Our mission is to create informed and confident buyer and seller clients, so tune in to learn more about Midland's real estate market. All right, so you rule the roost at home and you rule the roost when you're helping buyers buy houses. What are you seeing right now in Gladwin specifically?
There's not a lot of options. So that comes at a huge disadvantage to buyers because there's manufactured homes, which most people don't want to purchase. Or the other options are looking in Sugar Springs, which is more high-end, more expensive homes. You have an HOA. You're about 15 to 20 minutes away from any town. And I mean, it comes with good, luxuries like pools and golf courses and things like that. But most first-time home buyers don't want to live in a retirement community because that's really what it is. Most people up there are vacationing in the summertime or they're getting, towards the end of and wanting to relax and just golf all day. So you don't see a lot of young families that want to live, again, 20 minutes out of town. So right now it's the struggle of finding properties to even look at.
What about your buyers that are in Midland? Your first-time buyers looking around Midland, what are they dealing with?
The struggle is usually just expectation management and what they can realistically afford. Even with first-time home buyers, you're seeing them move up in the price brackets, but not necessarily liking the idea of what that monthly payment looks like. And trying to find something under 150, as you know, is quite difficult. Maybe a 2-bedroom, but if you're starting a family, it's tough to get into that market and you're running into, a giant pool of the same buyers looking for the same exact thing. So that's the toughest one for first-time home buyers is just, again, finding something and being able to compete and feeling comfortable about it at the end of the day. Because that's the other big issue is it's a lot of money and it's your first time and now you're getting roped into this big time payment. And so finding something and feeling comfortable is definitely the biggest hurdle you find with first-time home buyers in this crazy market that we're in.
Well, when you do find that house that's right for the buyer, how do you advise them to structure their offer? What kind of tips and tricks are you advising them to include so that they have a better chance of getting their offer accepted?
I would say we have to always assume if, again, this is talking multiple offers because 9 times out of 10 right now, that's what we're dealing with, is that all the other offers are list price or higher. So now we have to think of what do we feel comfortable actually paying? When you go to bed at night, are you feeling sick about what your offer is, or do you feel okay? I love it, and this is totally worth that. Is a conversation that we have. First-time home buyers, we have a home inspection, and that's another tough one that you have to have that conversation. Yes, this is potentially the thing that could make or break our offer, but I strongly suggest that you have a home inspection. Again, we shorten that time period if we can, just so we're not wasting anybody's time. And again, it's one of those things that I would never tell someone not to do. So other than that, inspection, we're going to go with whatever they feel comfortable with. I never want a home buyer to feel pressured, especially right now. I feel like a lot of home buyers feel like, oh God, you're trying to sell me this house. And I'm not. I want you to feel comfortable. And at the end of the day, if it's not this one and we go look at 50 more, I'm here for it. I don't care. As long as you feel comfortable, you're happy, you love the house that you're buying. It's not my house. It's not my money. I am here to support whatever you choose to do. So that's, the biggest thing structuring an offer is what makes you feel comfortable at the end of the day, because you're paying for it, not me.
All right. So when you take a buyer into a house, and you take them around up, down, inside, and out, what kind of things do you tell them? What kind of things do you look out for? How do you advise a client when they're looking at a house? what are some important things for them to be considering?
So my biggest thing is, and this isn't even just first-time home buyers, it's just any buyer. I'm going to go look if we have a basement. We're going to go look in the basement and check for any cracks or anything like that. Even if it says on the disclosure there's never been water or anything like that, if it's an unfinished basement and we can look at the foundation. I'm not a foundation expert, but I definitely know if a wall's bowing and if we should be concerned about it. Same with, is the furnace updated? That's a big one. Whether it's old or not, we need to know the age because we got to factor that in. Are you going to have to worry about that later on? And how long do we have? Same with the air conditioner. We look at the roof. Again, not a roof expert, but you can usually tell if we're missing a bunch of shingles. Is the soffit starting to sag? Do we have some situation that we need to make sure that we take note of when we have our home inspection? So it's all of those things, the major costs. Obviously, most buyers are going to look around. Okay, I don't like that paint color. We can note that. But I want to look at the major expenses and, to prepare them. Same with under the sinks, that's something. Is there anything dripping? Again, it's going to go over in the inspection, but, is it worth us even going to the inspection and fighting if we're seeing some major things that we know would just turn us off automatically?
What would you tell somebody who walks into a house and they love it, but the furnace is older, the roof is older, some of the deferred maintenance items are coming up? How do they make a decision whether or not they want to buy that house knowing that there are going to be some things down the road that they're going to have to handle?
Well, it depends on the price. I would say, is it priced because those things are getting older? And if it's something that's completely just a turn off and that you will not have the money, after you close on this house to repair those things, then it's probably not the one for you. You don't want to go spend every last dollar you have to close on the house and now have to worry about, okay, I don't have the money. My roof's starting to leak. I would just let them know the different options. Are you sure about it? Again, we're going to have an inspection. We can see what condition it's actually in. That being said, some inspectors will give you a life expectancy of things, and it's not a guarantee. That's just a rough estimate of how much longer it's going to last. But again, if that's a major concern for you, I would say it's probably not the one. You don't want to go in feeling sick about it and, oh God, all my money is going to be drained into this house if you don't have the money for it. So,
well, let's flip it over to the seller side of the coin then, because when you're helping a seller get ready to market their house for sale, they're going to have some deferred maintenance items or some little things here and there that should be taken care of ahead of time. How do you advise your sellers, and what do you tell them to convince them to do what they need to do?
To convince them what they need to do, I would just show them other listings. So like when we're running our comps and stuff, like, if we're comparing our house to this house, okay, this doesn't look it's just really cluttered and it needs new lighting or new shades on the windows. You can tell from other listings which ones are bright and just refreshed, not necessarily everything's redone. You're not doing a complete remodel. And then we'll take that into consideration. Are we even close to the comps, finish wise? Same with roof and stuff. If a house is, selling that's kind of comparable, but it's got a brand new roof, brand new furnace, then we need to make some adjustments on our end if, we're not willing to replace that prior to listing, which, again, I would usually not advise them to go out and redo all that. Just, be open-minded that buyers are going to see that and think those things too when they are determining the price that they're willing to offer on it.
What do you think is the one most important thing that a seller can do to prepare their house for sale?
Declutter. Yeah, minimalize. I feel like that's always the one that when you walk in, especially if you are someone like me, and if you were to walk into a room and it has so much furniture and so much personal things everywhere, it's very hard to get a feel of even how big the room is. You can turn somebody off by having a room that's packed with a bed, 3 dressers, and lighting. Make things look a little brighter. Open the blinds up, declutter as much as you can, clean. Try to minimize as much as you can. Obviously, there's tons of maintenance. If you have a bunch of things that need to be repaired, I would go and do as much as you can. That's realistic. Again, you're not going to go do anything crazy, new roof and all that stuff while you're in the process of listing, unless it's a necessity. But yeah, declutter as much as you can, because it is very hard to feel what a room would feel like when you actually move into it.
When you're staging a house for sale, what considerations do you make in terms of what you leave in, what you take out, what you move? What's important?
I would say, again, the depersonalization. Try to get rid of anything that's, picture frames of all of your family and stuff. It's okay to leave some things on the wall, like mirrors and decorative things. I would try not to make it totally your aesthetic. If you're, even for myself, if I was to be the one who's staging it, I wouldn't make it to, okay, I really like, traditional wood and like a traditional house. I wouldn't necessarily do that. Just minimal, not bulky furniture in each room, giant pieces that are taking up a large majority of the space. Minimize, make it look fresh again, light colored curtains, not black. Try to freshen up each space as much as you possibly can.
What's the benefit of a seller holding open houses on the weekends when they're trying to sell their house?
Getting buyers through the door. Again, most buyers will go look with their agents, but if a husband and wife buyers are out for coffee and they see an open house and they don't want to wait for their agent, they can just go walk through it. You're going to get buyers through the door, whether they're even actual buyers for your house. They might know somebody that's looking, and they might be nosy and just want to check it out, but think, oh God, that would be great for my friend who's looking, and I can go tell them that all these wonderful things about this house. You're going to get more people through the door. Obviously pictures get buyers through the door too, but if it's more open and casual and more, again, just accessible for buyers to just stop in, whether they are looking or not, it's getting people through the door and talking about your house.
Yeah, I think when you hold an open house too, every buyer in your price range gets a notification that the house is being held open through email. And that's another way to expose the house to more potential buyers and create more top of mind awareness. Just simply by scheduling an open house, that hits a lot of people. And then, there's all the other benefits of people driving by and swinging into. So I think open houses are a really good way to market houses for sale. If you have a listing that's been on the market for 2 or 3 weeks and it hasn't accepted an offer yet, which we're starting to see a little bit now because days on market is starting to be longer than they used to be, how do you advise a seller to make an adjustment?
So typically we'll have that conversation prior to even listing. We'll go over our price range that, again, it's an opinion. We look at all the data and try to come up with a good game plan. We'll start at the top end or mid-range and see what we come up with. And I always tell them, even in this market, yes, days on market has, significantly went up. When I say significant, not that much, it's pretty reasonable. But now that it has gone up, we have the conversation that if we're not getting people through the door, we're not getting interest, and we're one of 3 homes that, would fit in this price range, it's probably our price. So let's come up with a game plan right now. And I will also preface that by, you don't want to be the guy who's coming down $500. Let's sit for another 3 weeks, come down $500. Let's discuss right now where that, not necessarily bottom line, but where we still feel comfortable and we probably could list at right now. And just know that, if we're talking 14 days, we're not getting any offers. We're getting feedback about the price and not anything specific. It would be different if we were getting a specific, this is an issue. Like everyone's saying that. And if it's something that we can't change, okay, then we'll have a conversation about that. Or if it's something we can change, say it smells or something crazy, then we'll worry about that problem first. And then, again, we always started out with that. I mean, we're already talking about once we hit 14 days, how much longer are we waiting? Let's drop it significant to where we feel comfortable. But that way we're falling into a whole new price bracket and bringing in a whole new group of buyers.
Would you agree that even a 1 or 2 or 3% price reduction from the current listing price has a significant effect on buyer interest?
Yes, because a lot of buyers are waiting, even if it is already in their price range at the top end. they're worried that it's going to be gone. So they think, I'm not even going to bother. It's not worth my time. But they see that price adjustment and then all of a sudden, hey, I'm really interested because no one else seems to be interested.
Yeah.
Now, all of us who are waiting are jumping back in and now very interested again. So even that smaller one, again, is just going to kind of refresh in a buyer's mind, and it shows up online if there's a price reduction. So again, it kind of triggers again to those buyers, hey, this one's still there. Come check it out.
Well, I think also in part when you have such a seller's market, if a listing is incorrectly priced too high, buyers want to maybe make an offer for what they think the house is worth, but they don't because it's less than the listing price. And they think there's no chance that it would be accepted. So by overpricing your house incorrectly by accident, you're actually disincentivizing buyers from making an offer on it because they don't think they're going to get it accepted because their value or their estimate of value of the property is less than what you're asking.
Right. And they're scared that they're going to offend you.
Right.
They're worried that, they've seen the market in the last couple of years and think they're going to think I'm just so stupid for even trying. But then you do have that mentality of sellers that are like, well, if they like it so much, they'll make an offer. And you try to, again, in the initial meeting, let them know, like, that's not the same mentality as it used to be. Now we're talking about you're scaring away buyers by doing it. Yeah. And yes, I understand that, you used to be able to do it. Well, if someone wants to do business, they're just going to make an offer. No, they've made offers and then they got turned down, and now you've scared them away because they think they don't have a chance, at that price point versus where they're really willing to buy your house.
I think what you just said hits the nail on the head. It's a giant misconception a lot of sellers have that, hey, if they want my house, they'll just make an offer. Yeah. The truth is, in a seller's market, that's not the case. And agents, unfortunately, sometimes have that same philosophy where they don't want to make an offer that's $15,000 below the listing price because they think it's offensive and they think it has no shot. But in reality, if the listing is $15,000 overpriced from what the true market value of that house happens to be, then the seller, again, is just making a scenario in which buyers go and they look at other houses that are comparable and they're seeing better value in the competition because the other houses are priced less than your house.
Right.
So in reality, your overpriced listing is really selling your competition instead of selling your own house.
Yeah, it definitely is just, again, a turnoff because these buyers are used to a totally different mentality. I mean, they're out here fighting for their lives trying to win something, and they've already been told to kick rocks in the price range that they feel comfortable in. Yeah. And now you're telling them that you want this amount, and then they feel like, well, that's just, they're not going to accept my offer if I come in $15,000 low at what I feel comfortable at. And then your seller's sitting there, well, I don't understand. They would just make us an offer, we're willing to work with them, or, we can go back and forth. And, those days are well past us for a while now. And hopefully, again, we are seeing a little bit more often that, we can go back and forth with the price, but it's pretty rare, especially in that lower price point where you are first-time home buyers. I mean, that's still a tough market that we're in. So those buyers are getting scared, and again, it's their first time. So they're already pretty timid when it comes to making offers.
Yeah, and I've noticed, especially in that $100,000 to $250,000 price range in and around Midland, is when you go to try to estimate the value of a house today, you're getting a completely different number than you and I would have gotten 2 or 3 years ago. And because there's been a lot of price appreciation in the last few years. So we have recency bias as agents, and we look at a house that used to be worth $150 all day. Now it's selling for $200,000 or $225,000. And it's hard for agents to get their head around advising clients, hey, look, you need to offer $200,000 to $225,000 on this house because just a couple of years ago, that's not what you paid for it. But it's important that you as a buyer and we as agents stay current with what things are worth today, because that's what you're going to need to pay in order to get what you want.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Well, and that brings me to, like for first-time home buyers, typically we look at the neighborhoods that, 3 years ago would have been great first-time home buyer neighborhoods that were at, the 110 range for a 3-bedroom, 1,100 square foot house. And now, I mean, they're selling for 189. And then you have to try to let the buyer know that, yes, I totally get it. It does seem crazy, but that's where we're at. And, anything more than that house is going to cost you even more. So it's not like it's just for those type of houses. Everything has went up, and it is a hard thing to, wrap your head around for a first-time home buyer, because again, their parents tell them, well, I could have bought my first house for $65,000, and that's another totally different hurdle.
Mom and dad advising.
Teaching mom and dad too while you're at it.
Yeah, mom and dad usually don't help, but they're trying to help, but they have the recency bias as well.
Right, and they haven't done it,
30 years.
more than likely in quite some time, so they're not aware of how the market is either. And I totally understand as a parent that you're worried that somebody's trying to get your child to do something that isn't necessarily right, or trying to sell them a house, which I think again is a misconception with people who haven't done this in a while, that we're not all just out here trying to sell you something. We're actually here to help you and be on your side.
Yeah, and I think part of that involves transparency with data. So one of the things that we always do when we're helping a buyer buy a house and make a buying decision is we bring them into the office and we run a comparative market analysis on the house that they want to buy, so that they can see with their own eyes, and mom and dad are welcome to join. They can sit down in the office and say, okay, this house is 1,300 square feet. And the house next to it that sold 2 months ago is 1,300 square feet. That one sold for $210. This one's listed for $215. Okay, that makes sense. Now, yes, 3 years ago it might have been listed for $145, but that's not really irrelevant anymore. And that's okay, because you're going to trade whether you buy or sell a house. You're trading in the same market. So if you buy a house for $189 or $225 today, 3 or 4 or 5 years from now when you want to sell it, theoretically, most likely it's going to be worth more, right? So you're trading in the same markets. And you're also trading in the current interest rate environment, whatever that happens to be. Rates go up, rates go down, rates go back up. And at the end of the day, when you're buying a house, you got to buy when you need to buy. And you're going to trade into and out of those markets whenever you need to logistically. So, the best thing that you can do as a buyer is try to be informed and really have an agent like Kirsty that's going to break down all the numbers. It's going to help you feel comfortable, help you feel safe, but really be informed so you can make a good decision. And
I feel like right now, too, we're running into a lot of buyers asking about the interest rate and, what do we do? Because the interest rate is so high and everything costs so much money. Should we buy a house? Well, my answer is everyone needs houses. I mean, that's a given. So if you're renting, you're still wasting money. You're throwing money at somebody else's mortgage and not your own. So do you want to buy right now when interest rates are high, when the market's a little bit slower, a little easier to work with, and then have the option of refinancing when rates come down, or wait until rates come down, and now you're back in that feeding frenzy, and not only are you going to be competing with a bunch of other buyers, you're driving the price up again, because now we're going to have to start doing back to $20,000 over list price. So it's already high. By then, we're driving it up even higher. But the rate's lower, yes, but so do you want to overpay now or do you want to overpay later? But if you overpay now, you have the option of refinancing and not having to fight for a house. So it's a more of a necessity. How bad do you need a house right now?
Yeah.
Is it worth that for you? Again, if you know that in the next year you have to buy a house, again, which is the better option for you? Overpaying now and refinancing later, or overpaying later?
100% agree. I love the way you structured that answer, because the day you buy a house, you start getting benefits. You have ownership. You have, you can write off your interest. You can write off your taxes. You're paying down principal. You're building equity. Theoretically, that property is increasing in value, so you're building net worth. There are so many benefits that come along with buying a house that, regardless of the interest rates, obviously buying at a 5 interest rate is better than a 7. I get that. But not buying at all gets you nothing.
Right.
So
at the end of it, you have nothing to show for it. You're just renting and throwing the money at something that's not yours.
Right. So you're paying around the same amount to rent versus buy, maybe more, maybe less a little bit, but you're getting zero benefit, no tax write-off, no tax incentive, no net worth growth. Nothing is happening that's helping you when you rent. Literally nothing, except a little bit of mobility and freedom, which is good. But if you're going somewhere, you're putting boots on, you're putting a flag in the ground. You have family. You're trying to grow your family and do all those things. You're going to be there for a while. Buying a house makes a lot of sense, regardless of the rate.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. So if you know that, within the next year you are going to buy a house, again, it's totally up to you. It's whatever makes sense for you. But that's the way to think about it, is if it has to be done in the next year, which version do I like better for me? And again, who's to say the rates will come down? We don't know. As much as we hope that happens. We don't know. We can't read the future. But again, the security of knowing that you have a better chance of getting a house right now and then the rates coming down seems a lot easier to swallow than coming back in the market when they come down and now having to fight everybody to get a house.
Let me make sure I understand this correctly. So you're saying that when interest rates are higher than they used to be, it might actually be a better buying environment for a buyer because there may be fewer competitors, and the higher the interest rates go, theoretically, the less pressure on prices to grow. Mm-hmm. So it's not a bad environment to be buying a house, other than the rate's a little higher than it used to be. But again, once the rates do come down eventually, as they will eventually, you just hit a refinance at that point, and now you have a house.
Yeah. With a better rate.
With a better rate.
And you're not fighting.
And if the rates do come down and that feeding frenzy that you described does turn back around, guess what? The value of the house that you bought 3 years ago is going to skyrocket. So you're going to benefit from that feeding frenzy without being part of it.
So when you do go to refinance at a smaller rate and you need equity out of your house for whatever reason, there's always that option too. So again, it's whatever fits, your narrative, whatever you have going on in your life. But it is something to think about, because right now it's a very common question is, well, why would I do that when rates are high? Also keep in mind, when rates were low, that was a pretty rare occasion that rates are going to be that low. Yeah. I mean, that's, again, who knows when or if that'll ever happen again. Mm-hmm. But at least you do know, even if it's a couple % lower, you have the option of refinancing versus driving that price up and overpaying later. Maybe it is for the next year, you have that high interest rate, or maybe 2 years. But again, when that changes, you have a house. You already have some sort of interest in a property. You're not renting and throwing money at nothing and having to worry about all those things. Again, yes, there's added maintenance costs when you own a house, but it's yours. And I feel like that's most people's goals.
I think that buyer consultation process that you take your buyers through before they get started helps them to really understand all the dynamics of buying a house, including what it looks like if they see a house that's listed by owner, how to proceed. So how do you advise a buyer to proceed when they see a house listed by owner so that they stay protected?
So I always ask them, if they find one that they love, I tell them, don't reach out to the seller. Let me know the address. I'll get the phone number. I'll reach out to them, set something up. I don't dive too deep into how, I'm paid and stuff. I let them know. Obviously, they don't want to hire an agent. So money is going to come into play. And typically, we will talk about it if we like it. So if we like it, I'm already having the conversation with the seller privately on my own when I'm talking to them about showing it. And then usually, most time than not, sellers are open to paying something. So I always try to do that route. I have a hard time asking buyers to pay an additional fee on top of commission. And in that instance, because there's not commission, I talk to the sellers and try to work that out on my own. And then if I can't, then it's a conversation I'll have with my buyers on maybe not representing them as an actual buyer's agent and just doing the transaction and the paperwork, and what they feel comfortable with.
Well, the way it really comes down when there's a for sale by owner seller, 9 out of 10 times they're listing their house by owner because they want to save money on commission. And that's a logical concept. There's a lot of arguments to be made that they're actually costing themselves money because they're not getting the same exposure as a listed house would get. So when I talk to a for sale by owner seller, one of the things I say is, hey, look, you're trying to save 3% by not paying a listing agent. I get that, but you're probably costing yourself more than 3% on your sale price because you're not getting the same exposure that a good listing agent would get you. So that's one thing. 9 out of 10 times, I'd say 99 out of 100 times, a for sale by owner house doesn't sell for as much as it would have sold for if you and I had listed it.
Right.
And more by less than 3%. In other words, that marginal difference that the seller's trying to save, they end up costing themselves in many cases.
And a lot of times too is it's easier when you have the conversation with the seller and let them know not only are you saving money because you're not paying 6% because you didn't list your house, now you're only paying half, it's a little bit easier to talk to them on your own and just explaining to them, listen, I won't represent you. I'm not here for your best interest. I will obviously explain the contract when I send it to you, to the best of my ability. What you do on your end, if you hire a lawyer or how you perceive things is on you. I will deliver it to the title company. So I am doing work for you. I just don't work for you. So it actually is pretty easy, especially once you start explaining the details of what now they have to do, because a lot of sellers think, oh, well, it's super easy. I have a cousin who, can look at my contract and I was supposed to send it to a title company.
Disclosures? What's
right.
that?
Yeah. And a lot of times you will find that they don't have disclosures. And then you say, well, I have a blank one that I can send you and that you can fill out for my buyers. And they do end up seeing that there is a benefit to having an agent involved. Again, 9 times out of 10, most of them are actually pretty perceptive into, wanting to work with an agent because we do know what we're doing. And it can be scary once they start realizing, okay, this is a lot more than just putting a sign in my yard and somebody says they want to pay me and shake my hand.
Well, the value of an agent is that the agent brings the contract to the seller. That's why if you're buying a house and you don't work through your agent, then the seller doesn't feel like your agent had value in the transaction because he or she didn't bring you to the table. So by going directly to a seller, if you're trying to buy a house, a for sale by owner seller, you're accidentally exposing yourself to having a really hard time being represented because the seller is not going to want to deal with
to pay for your agent. And
because he or she didn't bring you to the table.
Well, and a lot of times too, you find, and I have this conversation with the buyer as well, is once you go to that seller and they don't want to work with an agent and they start telling you, it's okay, you don't need your agent, we can write something up together. Now you are
exposed.
Yes, you're exposing yourself to a bunch of things, especially when if you don't understand what you're doing or what any of the contract means. Again, now we're talking about the buyer who didn't realize all the things that go into it. And, oh, goodness, I have to worry about all these things. I actually just had a family friend's daughter who's quite young, and her boyfriend had met somebody for sale by owner, and they were talking about meeting up and just coming up with a contract and doing a land contract.
Oh, boy.
And so I was like, there's a lot more that goes into it than you sitting down and writing something on a piece of paper. Because now we're talking about, tons of different terms. Who's in charge of what? When does this loan balloon? Like, there's so much more to transactions than I think a lot of people understand. Again, a lot of them think, we just sit down and you owe me this much money and we'll close on this day.
Well, this is the ugly truth about it. Real estate agents like to sell houses that are listed because they know they're going to get paid because the commissions have already been negotiated and they've already been made public to the agents. So right away, if you're a for sale by owner seller, you're disincentivizing agents who work with 89% of the buyers in the market, by the way, because they already don't necessarily they're not incentivized to work with you because you haven't guaranteed to pay them. And real estate agents want to be paid to represent their clients in bringing valuable contracts to the table. So if you are going to list by owner, you have to work with the buyer's agents because if you're not, you're cutting yourself off from 90% of the buyers, which is just not in your best interest. Number one. Number two, if you're listed by owner and an agent brings you a contract, first of all, say thank you. Thank you, because they brought you a 6-figure contract. It's a valuable, it's a valuable thing that they're bringing to the table. And if you have a good agent that's patient and kind and helpful, sit down with that agent and just structure the response that includes paying the agent for the contract. And the buyer understands that they're doing that because when a buyer buys a listed house now, they're paying for that one way or another. It's just indirectly because they're paying for the house and then the house is being sold and this part of the proceeds of the sale are paying the agents. That's fine. It's the way it works. But when you're selling by owner, you just need to take that into account and understand that you're probably going to be able to sell the house for a little bit less than you would have paid commissions otherwise because you did the work of representing yourself on that listing side. But you still need to pay your buyer's agent who brings you a valuable contract because that person needs to be compensated for bringing it because they need to be incentivized to bring it.
And not to mention having an agent for the buyer makes your life easier as a seller because, again, they're here to help them through the transaction because if they didn't have somebody, they have no idea what they're doing.
100%.
Again, you could be waiting months because they forgot to take it to a title company and even get things started. That now, how long are you giving them for an inspection? Like things, again, could go totally sideways without representation. So yes, you have to pay, but it is part of the process and it will make your life 10 times easier.
I'm telling you, I understand the hesitation or I understand somebody who, has done real estate transactions in the past. They're usually older folks. They usually have done it before. They don't think they need an agent. They don't think agents are valuable. They don't think agents are worth the cost. And I understand their perspective. I completely disagree with it. I guarantee that's wrong. But I understand that they have that perspective. But when they disincentivize agents, they say, we're not working with you. We don't want to deal with you. What they're really saying is, we don't want to deal with your buyer. Because the buyer wants to be represented. And that's what for sale by owner sellers sometimes they fail to understand. The buyers in the market, especially the first-time buyers that we work with all the time, they're not going to enter into a transaction alone.
Right. They're scared. They have no idea what they're doing. And
Nor should they.
Yeah.
If you got accused of murder, would you defend yourself? No. Would you deal directly with the prosecutor? Or maybe you would. No, of course not. And real estate, people that want to buy houses, they're not real estate professionals. They're doctors, lawyers. They're working here, working there. They don't understand the mechanics of real estate transaction. And guess what, Mr. For Sale by Owner Seller? The last thing that a buyer wants to do is lean on your advice and your guidance in a transaction where you don't have a fiduciary duty to that buyer.
Right. And nor do they know you. What do we say about hiring an agent? They want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. And if you're working with somebody who is probably out for their best interest, and now they're going to have to rely on you to guide them through this process, that's scary. 100%. Whether you're first-time home buyer or not, it's very hard to trust somebody that you don't know. And that's why when we do meet with buyers, we explain everything. And I always tell buyers too, after we meet and we have a full-blown consultation, start to finish, I remind them it's okay. Like, there's no quiz. You don't do this every day. At any point, you can call me. This is not something that you have to remember. Every step of this process, I'm going to remind you. Do you remember what we're doing next? This is the next step. We talked about it. And then we'll go over that whole next step together. And do you have any questions? Because again, they don't do this every day. So no matter how much we sit here and teach them, they're nervous, they're new, they need help. So going and trusting somebody that, isn't there to teach them is definitely scary. That's why we're here.
And that's why Modern Realty has the buyer roadmap. And we take our buyers through the entire home buying process step by step. That's why our mission is to create informed and confident buyer and seller clients. What that really means is we want our clients to understand those steps.
Right.
We want them to know in advance, to at least have seen what's coming. And then as they hit the next step and the next stage, you're right there holding their hand, guiding them along. And all of a sudden, when it's time for inspection, appraisal, loan approval, all those things as they happen, the buyer understands that was what was coming because you helped them to feel ready.
And then and again, next time we get to that next step, we're just going to do a refresher. What did we talk about? So it's not like they've never heard this before. Earnest money, what? You've never mentioned this. No, we had a long conversation about it. We've talked about the extra expenses on top of, closing costs and stuff like that. We've already talked about the inspection, the appraisal getting paid for at a different time than closing. We've already discussed all of those things. And at any point, if they have questions or forget, they have a buyer roadmap, the hard copy if they want to do their homework, or they can call or text us and just go over it again and ask questions. At no point ever are we quizzing them on how good of a home buyer are you. I hope they're A+ buyers, but I'm here to help. That's why we're here. We're experts at it. We do it all the time. And, that's part of our job is to help you and guide you and make sure that you know what's going on so you're not scared. We don't want scared buyers.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Modern Agent Podcast. Please follow at Modern Realty Midland on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you need to buy or sell a house, please reach out to Modern Realty by going to www.modernrealty.us. Modern Realty, your home, our focus.